Welcome, Veritas family. Thank you for joining us here at Give and Take. I'm Sherry Davis, and I am joined today by Dr. John Edmonds. Hi, John.
Hey, Sherry, great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm excited about our half hour together.
Yes, I'm so excited. Now, John is a repeat offender, and so we are glad to have him back with us today. If you are watching this live or in replay, be sure to tell us where you're watching from. That way we know where you are. John, as you know, we usually ask our guests to give us a little bit, just a brief Veritas origin story. So tell us how you became a part of the Veritas family.
Sure. My wife and I have both been involved in higher education for most of our career, so to speak, most of our vocational ministry. And I was at another institution for many years, worked for a total of 20, taught for 13. I left there in 2009, went to a church, but then to work with the pastor. But then I felt God lead me get back into higher ed. And so I actually moved to Dallas to work on a PhD. Long story short, I ended up becoming a principal of a day school there and kind of put the PhD on hold. And I told the pastor of the church at that school that I would he asked me to be the principal. At first I said I have no desire to do this, but after a couple of months, I ended up being the principal. And I told the pastor I won't be here long term. This is not my what God's called me for my long-term ministry.
Mhm.
And he said, "How about giving me at least a 2-year commitment?" I said, "I'll give you at least three.
There you
I'll
go.
be here 3 years." Well, then the third year rolled around, and the school needed to go through reaccreditation, and so they were with ACSI at the time because AACS did not have an accrediting body in that area. But while I was there, they developed one and got it approved by the state of Texas. And I knew it would be difficult if I left, if the new principal coming in had to go through all this process, just being new to the school.
Sure.
And so I told the pastor, I said, I'll stay one more year. Well, during that year, Daniel Stevens, who you know well, Sherry,
Mhm.
Daniel was at that time the principal of, at that time, Virginia Baptist College. And Daniel, I had known him from back in the early 2000s. I had him as a student at Pensacola Christian College. And so Daniel was talking to me in my office, and we started talking about VBC. And he was telling me that they were looking for somebody with EDD. I said, well, my wife has the EDD. And he said they were looking for somebody to be the academic dean. Well, at that time, I had just started looking at going to a higher ed somewhere.
Hmm.
I talked to a couple institutions, and so Lord just worked it out where Daniel was through that church. I had never heard of, to my recollection, I never heard of VBC before I talked with Daniel at that time. And so I started talk to Daniel. We came down here a few weeks later. The Lord just, worked in our heart, and we moved here. That was in Thanksgiving 2015, and we actually came here in summer 2016, and so that's how we got here.
And the rest was history, huh?
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, I
And
remember
so
when you
we're
guys came and
thrilled to be
visited.
here and be part of the team. We really enjoy what God is doing through Veritas in the life of people.
Yeah, we were thrilled to have you. I remember when you guys came up to visit, and you forgot, the one key part where you were president of Veritas for a little while there. For how
Yes,
many years
yes.
was it total for you?
A little over 5 years. I
5 years.
came in 2016. Daniel had told me when he hired me that the ministry here was kind of in flux. He didn't know what would end up happening altogether. So I knew that coming in to the church here in the college. And obviously, the Pastor Skelly became the pastor here in the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And Daniel went to pastor a church in the spring of 2017. And the board then asked me if I would become the president. And so I said yes. I told Pastor Skelly, I enjoy admin, but being president of Veritas will not be a long-term, ministry for me. My passion is teaching, it's in the classroom.
Mhm.
And so interacting with students. And so I told him I don't envision myself being the president more than 5 years. Well, as it turned out, it was a little over 5 years.
Well, there you
And,
go. You had it right on the nose, huh?
and so I did that and then I resigned as president, took an academic sabbatical to finish my PhD. and wrapped that up right around this time last year.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
going to say it wasn't too long ago. I remember because the last time you were on Give and Take, I think you had just finished it up, if I remember
I
correctly.
think so, yes. When I talked with you in the spring. And
Yeah,
so,
very good. Well,
yes.
we were thrilled. It was definitely a pleasure to serve when were the president of Veritas. We were thrilled to be on the team and so grateful for the legacy that each one of our presidents have brought to where we are, brought us to where we are now. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, that is for sure. It's amazing to see how God, it's not, I guess it shouldn't be amazing. As Christians, we should expect this. God has had the proper person here at the proper time
That's
for the
right.
different seasons of what's going on at Veritas.
That's right. Yep. And we're just thrilled to be on the team. So,
Yes.
John, tell me a little bit about what you're bringing to our community today through Ministry Matters. What's been on your heart?
Yeah, in Ministry Matters, I want to talk about something that today affects basically anybody in ministry, and that is technology.
Mm.
Talk about technology in ministry and just share a few thoughts about that. So you may just delve into that now? Me just jump
Yeah.
into that?
Yeah, but let's hear it because
Yeah.
I'm with eager ears because everybody's life, I mean, even right now, if you're watching this, you're experiencing technology, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, Sherry, you've known me for, well, now I was giving my short testimony. You've known me for going on 10 years now,
Hmm.
and you're very well aware that I like technology a
Yeah.
lot. I like to be involved with technology. I like to learn new technologies. And so, as I think about technology and how it really just affects so many aspects of ministry from being in Bible software, studying, looking online, being involved with media in the church. There are just all kinds of aspects of technology. And again, as you mentioned, if you're at Veritas, you're part of using technology since we're an online institution.
That's right.
And as I thought about technology, you know, one thing people often think is I've got to have the latest and the greatest. If I want to be more successful and more efficient, I have to have the latest and greatest. And that's not true. I have learned over the years that the latest and greatest is often far more than what people will ever even use or need.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. Right now, I have a Mac, old Mac. It's a 2012, and you know, a long time ago, Apple quit giving updates for security patches. So I have not been online with that computer in a long time. But I bet that computer does something very efficiently, and that is some of the software that I run that I don't need to be online with. I still use it for that.
Hmm.
And so rather than using my newer computer with some task I need to do, I still use that 2012 computer.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I'm scanning right now all my books in. I've been going on a project the last several months. All my print books, I'm scanning in. I wish I would have done this 30 years ago. Of course, at that time, there wasn't the technology to do this
Yeah, I was
well.
going to say scanning anything 30 years ago would have been very cumbersome, I'm sure.
But right now, it's easy to scan books in. And so I really started doing this during my PhD studies because I was reading so much and I had eye issues, and it was easier to read a PDF that was blown up at
Hmm.
the time. But now it's a great time saver. As a matter of fact, as a side note, I have four bookshelves in my study. Today, I just got rid of one of them because all the books on everything scanned for that shelf is gone now.
Wow. So you felt very rewarded having that checked off the list. Got a whole shelf done. Good for you.
Very rewarded, exactly right. So I've probably scanned in, I don't know, a couple hundred books already.
Wow.
And so, but with technology, it's interesting. Although the scanner is a rather recent technology, it actually works better with my old computer
Hmm.
than it does with my new Mac. I bought one a few years ago.
Hmm.
But my point is this. Okay, that computer adequately does what I needed to do. I don't need to update it for those things. I have some software that I can't run on my computer anymore, actually, but still runs on that computer. And I learned this idea about using the technology appropriate for the job. I've heard it from many places, obviously, but one guy was a man named Larry Jordan. Now, our listeners may not be familiar with him, but Larry Jordan has been a guru in video, audio, photography type productions for decades. He was in Hollywood for a long time. He uses a lot of software to edit movies, do effects, and so forth. He's just part of the industry. I came across him many years ago. As I mentioned, I like technology. I've dabbled with video editing for a long time now, photography, video, and so forth. And I've subscribed to Larry Jordan's newsletter. Well, I don't even know how long now, but I get tidbits of information from him sometimes. And he was talking one time about using the right technology for the proper job. And he said, I do a lot of video editing, obviously. And he said, but what I do is my major power horse computer that can just crunch video in the background is an old iMac. And this was a number of years ago. But here he is on the cutting edge in technology with some of the stuff he does. But he said, for that particular job, that computer works great. Why would I buy something else when that is doing the job I need to do? And so I would encourage all of us with technology, make sure that when we buy technology, that it actually is what we need to get the job done. I mean, there's no reason to upgrade just to upgrade if what we have works, does a great job at it.
Well, I have a feeling you're stepping on some toes here, John. I have a feeling that those early adopters are like, wait a minute now. It's, like let's let me have my upgrade. We've got Alyssa Sultanic watching from Virginia, Denny watching in Antigua. We got Ann Real watching in Kentucky and Paula watching in Kentucky. So we wanted to say hi to those guys. Thanks for popping in, everyone.
Yes, thanks. Great to have you all here. And you're exactly right, Sherry. Early adopters. Yeah, and I like technology, and I often, um, I have bought new computers. It's obviously not wrong to do that, but we ought not be on the mindset when the latest and greatest comes out, we've got to jump on it right away. It's got to be what we need. I'll give you another example of that. Actually, I got this from Larry Jordan as well. I just actually today I read his newsletter. This popped up. Right now we used to be in the day, 720p was great video, then 1080, full HD, and then 2K, 4K. Now we have 8K. It's going to be 16K, 32K before. I mean, it's ridiculous. And today I read an article, Cambridge in their research technology department areas has done some study and has said that now displays are getting beyond the ability of the human retina to detect.
Wow.
And so, what Larry Jordan, the point he was making is make sure that you need to buy that nice, flashy 8K display.
Mm.
Sometimes in churches, a lot of churches have displays all through their buildings now, sometimes in the auditorium, sometimes announcements in the hallway. And the mentality can be, hey, I need to get this great 8K display so things will be much better for the people reading it. But what Cambridge pointed out was actually the farther you get from the display, the less detail you need to have in it because you can't perceive it anyways.
Wow, that's interesting.
I think about Adam, being, your husband, being involved with plays.
Mhm.
Years ago, I worked at Pensacola Christian with maintenance and some stuff I did as a student. And often we were around the areas where they were doing plays at. And I realized when they made their props, often they painted them quickly. They weren't fine detailed because the reason was in the audience, 50 feet away, you couldn't tell it anyways.
Right, good point.
And so with displays, the same thing. I would just crunch on some numbers this morning. And if you have a 65-inch 1080, just a 1080p TV, if you're 20 feet away, your eye detects no more detail in that than it will in an 8K system.
Hmm.
And so, it goes back to the idea about technology. Make sure that you're not overspending the Lord's money to buy things that won't make a difference anyways.
Yeah, it's a good
Um,
be a good steward when the outcome won't actually make any difference anyway.
yeah, exactly right. If you're up close to a display, obviously you can see more detail.
Hmm.
But the farther you get, and that's
Hmm.
what Jordan was saying. Say, look, people, make sure that in you're going out, and this is a secular guy. I don't know if he's even a Christian or not,
Sure.
but he's just in the media world. He says, hey, look, the latest and greatest is not always the best. And the human eye may not even be able to detect what you're spending $2,000 more to get.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just a good reminder about technology, that how that it outpaces even sometimes, what there is any advantage to.
What your need is, especially, I think to your point, especially those of us who are just living regular lives with regular technology needs, I think some of these things can really be more features than we will ever use in our lifetime or ever need. It looks like Penny hopped in. Hey, Penny, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sherry. And another thing is that the idea about when we use technology, we want to make sure that we are using it in a way that is effective.
Mhm.
And so like when we reach out and we try to deliver messages through media, we all know that graphic design is an art and a science.
Mhm.
And churches all the time are doing graphics. And you and I have seen plenty of good ones, and we've seen plenty of bad ones.
Yes, we have.
And there's when you go in your church and they're doing a video montage of something that's happened recently, if the montage is not great quality, it just it just doesn't bode well when we know that we have resources that could do so much better. It's just that people don't know how to do it adequately sometimes, how to do it correctly. And
Mhm.
again, this is not Larry Jordan Day, but Larry Jordan has affected me with technology. He has published a book called Techniques of Visual Persuasion.
Mm.
And it's just a great book. Again, this is just a secular book about visual persuasion, and so again, where you can see the cover better. By Larry Jordan, and it's a great if a person is not a graphic designer,
Okay.
he has a lot of great thoughts in there that are easy to understand about how to do things in a great professional way to make sure that we're being persuasive in what we're communicating.
Mm.
I think about really in the ministry, we are trying to persuade people
Mhm.
to do something for God.
Mhm.
And I teach preaching. It was one of the courses I preach on the undergraduate here. And I think about, there is a difference between just giving a lecture to give information out and between giving truth with the intent of wanting to persuade people to some position.
Right.
And obviously, sometimes we do, graphics in church. It's just informational.
Mhm.
But even if it's just informational, there's a way to produce that information that will be more aesthetically pleasing and will be more memorable and will communicate the message more effectively. And so, those are just some thoughts about technology. I have some other thoughts I could give, but we're running out of time here very quickly.
That's okay. I know those of you who are very interested in technology, this will hit home. And I am curious if you're watching this, let us know if you are an early adopter of new technology or if you are like me and you don't. Like, I have a really difficult time doing updates on any of my devices. Part of the reason is, John, too, you mentioned it earlier, because um, I don't want the bugs that come with the new stuff. Sometimes there's some stuff they're working out the kinks. And so I don't want to get involved with any of that, but then I just don't do it and I can get myself into big trouble. I definitely don't jump right into the new stuff. Don't do the updates. I don't get the new stuff. I just want to keep the stuff I know as long as possible. But I can see why I think it's important to be able to see how being a good steward of our resources to do the things to communicate and persuade those that we are influencing. Looks like Tyler in from North Carolina. Thanks for popping in, Tyler.
Yeah, let me share another thought about that before I leave this area about technology. And that is, whenever we're using technology to try to communicate, we need to remember that AI can be helpful. AI, that's a whole other thing that we could spend a whole session on.
Sure.
But AI has become very powerful today, but we can never forget that AI does not have some things that the human being possesses. One is the Holy Spirit of God.
Mhm.
We have the Holy Spirit of God who indwells us, and the Spirit can give us wisdom if we ask for wisdom. I think back about Larry Jordan. AI has been a big deal for a long time now in the industry of video and so forth. And it's been a few years ago. He wrote an article about AI, and about how people were crying out, "Oh no, AI is coming! We're all going to lose our jobs as video editors." But he said AI still cannot do something that people can do as well. They cannot tell the story as compassionately and as powerfully.
Mm.
And that's something to remember. AI, like any technology, is a tool,
Mhm.
and we can use tools to help us. but God has gifted us as human beings in a way that technology will never match. Now, technology gets better and better, but technology still is a machine.
Mhm.
And so, what I encourage us as God's people to do is to use technology in a way to help us, but never look at technology as the answer of, hey, if we use technology well, then we're going to be better at what we're doing automatically.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard a story a long time ago about some famous movie director. It's been a few years ago. iPhone's out already. AI was becoming more of an issue, a bigger deal, and cameras a bit later and greater, and so forth and so on. And they were talking about how that now anybody become a content creator because of all that what cameras can do. But they put an iPhone in the hand of a famous movie producer, and he shot something with an iPhone that was much better than what most people would produce with a high-end camera.
Hmm.
Why? Because he had the skill. He
Yeah.
knew how to frame the situation. He knew how to tell the story. He knew the sequence of shots to put everything in. And so just because we buy the latest and greatest does not automatically mean that we will be effective and efficient in what we're doing. We have to have the skills to use the tools effectively.
That's a really good analogy because I think there's some real truth there. Having just because you have the tool or the resource or the equipment does not mean that you have the background and the knowledge and the studying and this and that to make it the most efficient it can be. That's
Yes.
really interesting. I appreciate you bringing that. So you have another, I think we'll launch into some of our leadership questions. You already recommended a book in the technology section, but I know that you have another one. So let's launch into what book do you recommend for our community in the leadership realm?
Sure. I thought a little bit about leadership here today. Sure, sent me some thoughts about that, some questions. I've read a number of books on leadership, like many of you have. A book that it's not heavy on technique, but it's big on leadership philosophy. It's just a book called The Servant.
Hmm.
The Servant, it's a book on leadership. The subtitle is, if I can read it here, A Simple Story About the True Essence of Leadership. It's by a guy named James Hunter. And this book actually came out in 1998. I never bought a copy till years later. In 2012, he published another edition of it. Um, and it was interesting. In 1998, he talks about this in his 2012 edition of the book. In 1998, he'd search Amazon. Only 8 books had the title about servant leadership in them.
Hmm.
Um, Servant leadership is a subject that goes way beyond what we had time to deal with right here. In 1970, a man wrote a famous article, a seminal work on servant leadership, the servant as leader. It has had a lot of influence, but that was in 1970. But in 1998, still, it's not taken a hold in the business world. But when Hunter did his 2012 edition of the book, he said, although there were only 8 books with anything about servant leadership in the title in 1998, in 2012, there were over 4,600 books on Amazon that had that somehow in the title about the book.
Wow.
And so it has just exploded, this whole idea about servant leadership.
Hmm.
Well, what I would say, Sherry, is the business world is far behind what the Bible teaches.
Sure.
Because think about what Jesus tells his disciples.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?
Yeah.
He said, don't be like the Gentiles.
Hmm.
They think we're going to climb the ladder, we're going to get there, and we're going to be great because of, all the authority we command and so for all the power we have. And he says, that's not the way to greatness in the kingdom of God. And he says, Mark 10:44 and 45, classic verses about the ministry of Christ. Even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister
Hmm.
and to give his life a ransom for many. In this book here by Hunter about leadership, called The Servant, it's really just kind of a story that he invented, that he brings all these leadership principles into. And at the beginning, I don't know what his faith heritage is. I don't know what he's like. But in his introduction, he talks about how that when he's writing this book, he thought about bringing in the idea of Jesus and love and some things like that. And at first, he thought, if I do that, I may cut off some of my business contacts. He said, "Well, I'm just do it anyway." So, he talks about Jesus in there. He talks about the necessity of love. And he said what was ironic, he thought when he put that in his book, he only would be invited to faith-based organizations. But he said about 98% of his consulting he does is with secular businesses.
Wow.
Does top 100 companies in the United States. And so obviously servant leadership, Christ has told us if we want to truly lead, we've got to have a heart that's willing to serve people. Um, and I think Christ modeled that for us. And so again, I talk about in the last 20th century that kind of exploded, but that has been what God teaches throughout the Word of God about how to really influence people is not by, lording it over people,
Right.
but by influencing them through a proper heart for them and wanting to help them as people and not just as pawns to get a job done.
Yeah, I've listened to different leadership podcasts and things, and some secular, especially the secular ones, will come through. They'll have this breakthrough, this thing that has been successful in their business, and it boils down to some biblical principle that everybody kind of already knew. Like, look, we could have already told you that, but it's very interesting that his consulting clients were mostly secular. It's like they're clamoring for this information. That's really interesting.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because whenever any business, any institution builds upon biblical principles, even if they don't realize it,
That's right.
but when you follow biblical principles, it is going to be what is best for your organization.
That's right. Because it's ultimately what's best for your people,
Exactly right. What's best
interpersonal
for your people.
relationships and things. That's right. Yeah.
Right, exactly right.
Tell me what might be your favorite leadership quote.
You know, there's read a lot of them. Really, one of my favorite ones is from Hunter's book on the servant. In there, he talks about, he said, leadership, uh, the fundamental aspect of leadership is simple, the golden rule:
Hmm.
do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And he's right about that, is that leaders have got to see people as people. How can I help my team? He also makes the comment, successful organizations, everybody that works there is a leader.
Hmm.
Everybody there realizes, hey, this ministry, this corporation, this whatever the case may be, institution, I'm responsible for my part to help us succeed in what we've been called to do. Now, obviously, in the business world, they may or may not think of God, but here,
Mhm.
like at Veritas, okay, God has been the one who's worked Dr. Forrester's heart early on. God is the one who's directed people throughout the years. God has called this institution to a mission. And I now, as a faculty member, I have to look at, okay, what can I do most effectively to help Veritas succeed in the mission God's called it to? And I think that's an important aspect about any successful institution or ministry is that everybody looks at it. I'm not just punching the clock.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I'm some people may punch a clock, but
Mhm.
that doesn't detract from the point that really fundamentally they're there to not just get a paycheck, but to help that ministry succeed in what God's called it to do.
Yeah, that there's a sense of purpose there that everyone owns, and their own sphere of influence becomes their own mission. Yeah,
Exactly
that's
right.
really good. That's really good.
Yes.
I really believe that's what you'll find here at Veritas within each of our departments. There are each of us, we all do different things and we all have different job descriptions, but each one of us feels so privileged to be a part of this great purpose. And I think that without that level of purpose or that sense of purpose, sometimes it can feel very check the box or rote. It's just okay, like drawing the paycheck basically.
Right.
And I'm so thankful for our team and those who have been a part of Veritas over the years that has not been the case. Anne says back in 2010, when working on her MLIS, I worked with a professor from Wayne State University on researching followership, which is basically servant leadership. As I researched, I was amazed at how many in secular realm wrote on this, not realizing the biblical principle. Followership follows fellowship was the overriding principle. Yeah, it is amazing how, they think that they've come to these great conclusions kind of on their own,
Yes.
and they're very successful for sure.
Yes, exactly right. Yes.
Well, very good, John. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm always excited to have you on. You always bring something good to the table, and we are thrilled that you were able to carve the time out and join with us today.
Well, Sherry, thanks for inviting me again. I always have a fun time talking with you about whatever the issues are at hand.
Right.
And I enjoyed it thoroughly today and look forward down the road to being with you again someday.
Yes, thank you. And to those of you who are watching, if you are interested in Veritas, be sure to reach out to us. Again, we've already talked about our team a little bit. We love, love, love what we do. And we are excited to take your application, take your questions, take your call, whatever it is that you need from us. We are happy to help you. Message us, give us a call. If you are in a bachelor's program and need to level up to master's, or master's and need to level up to our doctoral program, be sure to reach out. We would love to help you. So, those of you who are watching, we will see you next week, next Monday at noon. See you then.